You're listening to the Wired for Impact podcast.
All right, welcome to the Wired for Impact podcast. This is Peter King, of course. I'm very, very excited to bring my special guest to you today. He is Tom Beal. Tom is a entrepreneur, a success mentor, coach, if you will, and has worked with some of the best on the planet. Has a fascinating background, grew up with a lot of turmoil, which we'll get into a little bit, had a near-death experience, which is what sort of prompted this episode in the first place. But then we'll shift into your success and, frankly, your success being defined by helping other people achieve their success, which is very interesting. We're going to get into all that. So first and foremost, Tom, thank you so much and welcome to the call.
Peter, it's an honor to be here, and I'm super excited for our conversation today.
You have had a wild journey, to say the least. You were born to teenagers, which I find right off the bat, that's not something you hear every single day, with 4 divorces, 6 marriages, and it created a lot of turmoil in your upbringing. Can you share briefly how that inspired you, perhaps not in the most healthy way, but it really gave you a drive to be the best? And if you could list off some of the accomplishments so our listeners can understand who we're dealing with here.
Sure. Awesome. And yes, it's been a wild and crazy journey, to say the least. Started with being born to teenagers. My mother was 17. My father was 19 when I was born. And I found out later in my life that there were some serious conversations about should these kids be allowed to have a kid, right? So abortion, I was born in 72. I'm 51 years old today. So abortion was recently legalized, and it was a serious conversation about, do we really feel these kids are ready to have a kid? And it was because I posted some stuff about this, and I've chatted with my aunts. The irony of that is it wasn't an accident pregnancy. This was a planned pregnancy at 17 and 19. See, my dad had just been drafted into the Army, and he was moving from upstate New York to Texas, and my mom and dad were together. My mom was still in high school. He was out of high school, and they wanted to get their parents' permission for her to get out of high school and go to Texas with him, and they denied that. So it was a plot to allow her to go to Texas with him in the Army. And lo and behold, so it wasn't an unplanned pregnancy, but my grandparents, their parents, regardless if it was planned or not, were having some serious conversations about aborting the baby or not. But my parents were absolutely against that. And I thank them for having the perseverance to, at that young age, even allow me to be born. And another thing that I've had to learn to clarify over the years, when I mentioned I grew up around 4 divorces and 6 marriages, that was between my parents. I've only been married and divorced once, but that's a whole nother story we may get to later. But I did make some decisions as a child, being part of the teenagers who weren't financially well off. My grandparents each had their own businesses. My father's dad owned an auto repair shop, and my grandpa was a hardwood foreman. And they had a decent income lifestyle, but nothing over the top. So my parents going on their own, it was always, we went many days without food. I always had the clothes that didn't fit. I mean, it just was it was a very poor upbringing. My mom was on food stamps and a whole bunch of help from the government. But through all that, and with those divorces and marriages, one of them moved me from upstate New York down to North Carolina. And that was a whole big traumatic experience for me. But I was in and out of 9 different schools by 8th grade, and always the new kid. I was a tiny child. I mean, I ended up being a pretty kick butt wrestler. But just to give you an idea, I was 91 pounds my freshman year, 91 pounds my sophomore year, 105 pounds my junior year, and I graduated high school at 119 pounds.
Wow.
Fast forward, I ended up wrestling in the Marine Corps for a little while at 149 and a half. Right now I'm about 165. I got fat and happy a few years ago, looked in the mirror and saw some pictures of a trip on a cruise. And I was like, wait a minute, I got fat and happy. So in 60 days, I went from 196 pounds to 168 pounds. That was in 2010. And I've kept that weight off since. So anyhow, as a child, I made some decisions. One, as an 8-year-old, I said, I'm never going to get divorced. Like when I get married, I'm getting married for good. I'm never going to get divorced. And then I also made some choices about being the best. Like my mom really planted some great seeds into my mind about how I can achieve anything if I set my mind to it. So she really helped me understand, even though we moved around a lot, even though we didn't have huge amounts of resources, she said, in this life, whatever you get clear on what you want and you give your heart and soul and you give your all, you can turn it into reality. So she trained me with that. So I got into many sports as a child and ended up becoming pretty darn good. like the best, in the areas that I went to. And I ended up excelling in bicycle freestyle, trick riding on bicycles, and then also in wrestling. And I ended up becoming a national bicycle champion for my age group back in 1989.
And for
And
those
with
that don't know, the Gen Xers know this, but anybody that's younger than that, BMX was pretty much the coolest thing on the planet back in the day. So that was a
yeah,
big deal.
that was pretty cool. And we had a local team and we did local events, and I would tour around the East Coast for competitions and things like that. So it was very fun. And as a young teenager, my mom actually was the manager for that team, and we had some amazing sponsors. So she got us in the press, and we got sponsors like LA Gear, Diamondback, Odyssey, Oakley. So I'd have clothes and sneakers and bike parts coming into me. I said, man, this life thing's pretty cool. And a teenager just getting stuff shipped to you from all these amazing companies. I'd be handing out LA Gears at my school for anyone that had my same shoe size, because I had a whole closet full of them back in the day. So I basically wanted approval. So in and out of all those relationships with my parents, going in and out of marriages and divorces, I felt like, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Am I lovable? Right. So sports was a way for me to, hey, look at me. Am I good enough now? Am I lovable now? So it's kind of a thing that led me to become very successful in sports. And then later on, number one in 5 sales organizations in the corporate world. And then was fortunate enough to help produce multiple tens of millions of dollars in the entrepreneurial space and create an amazing life. But that was from that probably not so ideal reason why was, am I good enough? Am I lovable? But it got me super high levels of success. So those were some decisions I made as a child that led to some cool accolades later on in life.
Yeah, I want to follow up with some questions about that later in the conversation. But first, let's talk about what happened on 9/11, but not the 9/11 that we normally think of, but the 9/11 in 1998 with your near-death experience.
So as time would unfold, 3 years after my 9/11 experience was the 9/11 that we all remember, September 11th, 2001. But September 11th, 1998 was the evening that I had a single car crash on a country road in upstate New York, Geneva, New York, and was ejected from the sunroof in the car that rolled 4 times and ended up being helicopter lifted from there to University of Rochester Medical Center. And I was a John Doe. I found out later that due to some of my stepbrothers working for the fire department, they worked with someone who was a first responder to that. And there's some rules. I don't fully understand them, but if it's a dead on arrival or if it's dead before it's shipped off on the helicopter, they keep the license at the scene. And if it's someone who's not going to be dead by the time the helicopter gets there, they put the license with the person. So I was sent without a license on the helicopter ride, and my car was brought to the fatality parking lot. So they have a normal crash parking lot and they have a fatality crash parking lot. I was a single car accident. So it was not looking good. They didn't think I'd be alive by the time I got to the hospital. So when I arrived, I was a John Doe. So I was missing from my family for over about a day while I was in intensive care with a respirator breathing for me. But I'll circle back to my experience as the near-death experience. And it freaked me out to a point where I didn't really share it that much in the initial years because I didn't want people thinking I was weird or delusional or making things up, but then finally owned it. And what I owned was my experience. Who knows, like it's kind of funny as we get older, we can be with some friends who are at those certain places and we'll have our perspective of it. And then the friend will share their perspective and we're both kind of off. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. So my personal experience, people ask me, is this. And so all I remember is after rolling and being ejected from the sunroof, laying in the field, thinking someone will be here soon. I tried getting up. I couldn't get up. I fell back down, in and out of consciousness. Thankfully, I didn't have any cuts or bruises. In the reenactment of the car accident, they called me an angel because they didn't know how I ended up without being crushed by the car or with cuts and bruises. So I'm laying there in and out of consciousness, tried to get up, couldn't, fell back down, and thinking someone will be here soon. The crash was a little after 10 p.m. on Friday, September 11th, 1998. It wasn't called in until close to midnight. And here's why. On this country road, it's fields. There's fields. And there's a house at the end of this field. It was about almost a quarter mile away at the edge of that field that I hit the embankment and rolled 4 times. And what the fire department stepbrother of mine told me, that the first responder that he worked with said that family was in bed and they heard something. They got up, they looked out the window and they didn't see anything in the field. Because when the car rolled, the battery fell out. So there are no lights or anything like that. So they heard something. They got up and looked. They didn't see anything. They went back to bed. And the man of the house, he's like, something happened. Like he was tossing and turning. He knew something, even though he couldn't see anything. So he called 911 an hour plus after the actual accident. So I remember lying in the field thinking they'll be there soon, and no one came. Like
Wow.
eternity passed, and I'm lying in the field, like, holy crap, I'm gonna die here. Like, really? Because I couldn't stand up. I had severe head trauma and nerve damage in my leg. Next thing you know, I'm about 20, 30 feet in the air, and I see someone lying in the field. And my mind is like, what's going on here? Like, am I dreaming? Like, and I look and I see, I kind of focus in on who's in the field, and I notice that it's me in the field. As soon as I notice that, now I'm pulled up and it's all bright white light. And I'm standing there amidst the bright white light, all confused, wondering what's happening. And then I see scenes of my funeral with my sisters who now actually live with me down here in St. Thomas. I'm actually renting a place from my one sister who's 10 years younger than me here at St. Thomas. The image behind me is her property that I live on currently here in St. Thomas. So I see my two sisters at my funeral crying, and it just felt so painful to see the pain and the anguish they were going through. And so I had that whole life flash in front of your eyes experience. And next thing you know, then from all that fear and worry and pain that I'm feeling from them having that sadness at my funeral, something or someone comes up next to me and puts their arm around me, and all the fear instantly goes away. And I know that all is well. And I know, like, it's a feeling of home, like I'm home, and it just feels so good, and all is perfect. There's nothing to worry about. Like, it's all is exactly as it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happened, even though it's all bright white light, then we turn 180 degrees. Now we're staring at these huge doors, and they open, and there's this, even though it's all bright white light, massive bright white light is pouring out of these doors, and we start walking towards the doors.
And
And
did you
halfway,
know who that was that put the arm around you?
I don't have any clue as to who that was. I have gone into some deeper woo-woo type stuff and had someone who's a channeler actually tell me that was you, that was your oversoul, that was your spiritual envelope, that was your version of you that knew you and all of everything. And it was a version of me that also knew it wasn't my time. So even though so halfway walking towards the bright white light, I said, stop. This isn't how it's supposed to end. I know you had more for me to accomplish. Send me back. And then at that moment, the next memory I have is waking up in intensive care with a respirator breathing for me. And all I can recall from that is it's super painful to be conscious when a respirator is breathing for you in and out, in and out. So I'm flailing around, and finally the nurses come over, they get that out. And now, because I got sent there as a John Doe, they're asking me questions. Who are you? Like, what's your address? Who are your parents? Who can we call? And so they're asking me these questions, and my mind heard what they're asking. And I would try to say my name, and random words would come out of my mouth. With severe head trauma, I had aphasia. I didn't know what aphasia was until I had it. And aphasia is when you have severe head trauma, your brain can't articulate what you're thinking. So it just spits out random words. So I've explained this to some urgent care nurses, and they finally like, oh, thank you for explaining it, because we recognize people that have that, they end up getting frustrated. So what happened with me is they're asking me what's my name. Random words are coming out. Now, as the random words are coming out, I heard myself in the words, and my mind was like, that's not what I'm trying to say. I would try to say it again.
Frustrating.
Yeah, and more random words would come out. So I got frustrated, would do it again. So then finally I just, stop. Okay, my brain's not working. So it's not connecting what I'm thinking to what I'm verbalizing. And I guess that may be, it's probably like as a baby. Like there's some research, if you study deep, like babies are super knowledgeable and super smart, but they don't know how to connect what they're thinking to verbalizing it. And that's kind of what aphasia is. So
we taught our kids sign language, and it was
yes.
There's so much more going on in a little 1.5-year-old's mind and body. And if you give them the tools to actually communicate, because their brain's not ready to communicate yet, but it's interesting.
Yes.
So you were dealing with that.
Yeah. So they were asking, even though they're asking me who I am and who can they call to let them know that I'm here, I wasn't able to articulate that. And then come to find out, my stepfather, who was in that town, he was a higher up person who just retired in the public works section of that town, and I was missing, right? So he started to get some inside information that publicly isn't available. So from his police officer friend, he ended up tracking me down that I was helicopter lifted to the hospital. So he found out and let the rest of the family know, but I was in the hospital for a long time. And I'm also wondering, why has no one come? Like, because just like I laid in the field thinking, Someone will be here soon. I'm in the hospital and no one's coming. I'm like, what? Like, I can't believe no one's here.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, by the time my aunt showed up, even though I had that aphasia, my mom's sister, my mom's younger sister, who's only 10 years older than me. And so at the time I was 25, so she was 35. I was able to articulate what took you so long. And she's like, that cracked her down, and it was painful here. So everyone got there, and then they were telling my parents and my family that, look, with aphasia and with the nerve damage he has in his leg, because I couldn't stand up still, there's no guarantee he'll walk or talk properly. Like, we don't know. Like, so they kept telling them that, and they were right next to my bed, and I would just shake my head no. I wasn't able to communicate verbally, but I would just shake my head no. And they're like, every time we tell him he may not walk or talk properly, he just shakes his head no. Right? So that was a problem to them. But in my mind, I never saw me not walking out of there and not talking. And so within a few days, I'm walking with a walker that old people walk with, and my leg is dragging. So I had what's called drop foot. So if you ever seen someone with a leg that drags, that's what my right leg was doing. And once I was able to walk with that walker, I ended up signing a whole stack of papers against doctor's order to get me out of the hospital, just because I didn't want to be continually told that I may never walk or talk properly again. So I got out of there, and I went to physical therapy a couple times, but I never got. I just like, you know what, I'm going to push my way through this. I probably stupid in retrospect, but that was my mentality at that time. And then a couple years later, after my leg had dragged, not severely, but it would kick out and drag a little bit. Obviously, when that happens, people always ask what happened. And so I got tired of telling the story. So I had to talk with my leg, and would smack it and talk to it on a daily basis. Like, look, I'm apologizing for what I put you through, but thankfully you're still here. So do whatever you got to do to fix it so that you don't drag anymore. My sister, who's a physical therapist, she can see my leg kick out just a little bit, but no one that's not a specialist in that field would know that I have that side effect from
the car crash. Yeah.
Yep.
Fascinating. I mean, to go from, we don't know if he's going to walk or even talk, to that. And then remind me, how old were you at that point?
25.
25. And then, so you went on to be a Marine after that? Or were you?
This is after the Marine Corps. Yep. So I was in Marine years prior. Yep.
Amazing. So what I recall talking to you before a few weeks ago, and one of the questions that I asked you was, what was your takeaway from this whole experience? Like, what were some of the profound lessons that you learned? So if you could share that, please, because that was really powerful.
Yep. And that's kind of what I teach now. And you are not dead yet. Like, I tried to capture what was the essence, what's the big lesson that I could share with people, that without them having to go through a near-death experience. Like, I wish I could touch something on your shoulder that would make you feel the way I felt without having to go through what I went through. So the big takeaways that I got are these. One was, I'm confident that when it's my time, it's my time. I'm not going to die a second early or a second late than from when it's my time to go. Now, from that, I have internalized that as, I am immune to death until I'm not. Period. I'm immune to death until I'm not. And there's nothing I can, like, and obviously saying that doesn't mean I'm going to jump off the deck here, a couple stories high. Like, using your proper discernment and making choices that are the healthiest choices that you can think of, because I want to be here many decades from now, but I'm also cognizant that I don't have a guarantee of tomorrow or even making it to tonight, right? So we all have those friends and family members who, like, crap, he's gone. Like, I just did a podcast interview with him 30 minutes ago. Like, what the heck happened? Right. I mean, that's how life unfolds. But we get the misbelief that we're guaranteed tomorrow, we're guaranteed next year, we're guaranteed 10 years from now. So it's that dichotomy of having the confidence that I am immune to death until I'm not, but also that I'm here at this greatest amusement park in the universe that I call life. And the rub is, we don't know when we're escorted out. So go for it. One of my other mantras is, make today great. So what are you going to do to maximize your time at this amazing amusement park? I mean, every single day, what are you doing? And that's why I'm so thankful we're having this conversation. I'm so thankful you are listening to this. And my hope is it will help touch you in that manner. So that's one of the aspects, that I'm immune to death until I'm not, which is based upon, I know that I'm not going to die a second prior or a second after. I'm going to die exactly when it's my time. And some of the other lessons kind of comes into the greatest amusement park. Like, that's another one. Like, I've also transmuted that into this. If follow along with me, whether it is or isn't, this is my belief. This is the greatest amusement park in the universe. And think about that. When we go to the amusement park, whether it's for a day, 3 days, or a week, we aren't sitting around complaining about what someone did or what some government did, or we're maximizing the joy that we have in that moment. So I'm of the belief that I'm here and you're here. Like if I were to summarize what's our 2-word purpose for being here, it's to joyously create. You are a joyous creator in your own unique way. So here we are at this greatest amusement park. We don't know when we're getting escorted out. So maximize it, go for it. So that's kind of, I circled in a whole bunch of the big takeaways. There's probably more, but
Well, I have some questions about the next phase of your life where you really got into entrepreneurship and success. You've had the advantage of working with some amazing people, Zig Ziglar, Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, to name a few. I've also spent some time with Tony Robbins and being in that community. One of the things that I noticed was that there was a ton of very, very, very successful people, but they were often driven by this, what I call driven by lack. They were driven by this desire to be approved, to be loved, to be accepted. And you mentioned that a little bit earlier in this conversation. And I wanted to ask you, when Tony does a great job of revealing that to people, and I've seen a lot of those very successful people at this like fork in the road where they go, wait a second, the whole reason why I'm so successful is because I have this insane drive that came from not being loved, and I want to be loved, and so that's fueling my my success. And then they realize, oh shoot, if I heal that psychological wound, won't that mean that my drive will go away? Will I just all of a sudden want to veg out and sit in a hammock all day and reap the rewards of my success? How do you maintain the drive while also healing the inner wound?
that's a fantastic question, right? So I mentioned my drive to become that top athlete was subconsciously fueled by my desire to be loved, to be approved, to be worthy enough of those different family members, and seeking approval of others. In healing that, what still allowed me to have that drive? And so it was a subconscious drive. There was other reasons that still led me to be that person who would go the extra mile, who would do, go above and beyond what anyone else would do in anything that I felt that was important to me. So there were some positive traits combined with that subconscious trait. So in healing it, it still doesn't eradicate that dedication, that commitment, that going the extra mile, that willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes, that drive. And as I've evolved in age and wisdom, it's really come down to the quote that I heard from Zig Ziglar ages ago, decades ago, and it's been my mantra, my underlying theme, which is this: you can have everything in life you want if you simply help enough others get what they want. So if you come from that heart of giving, what I found is you can't outgive. The more you give, the more you serve, the more you provide value, the more that it will be brought back to you. As you sow, so shall you reap. Part of my chapters of growing up was moving from upstate New York to North Carolina and being on a farm. And that chapter, and what I'll say in describing my childhood, it's not to compare who had the worst childhood. We all had stuff, regardless of what your parents came to the table with, whatever race, religion, country, state, town, whatever economic stature, whatever color, whatever, all the different differentiators that people lump us into in categories. Everybody has their own stuff. Your own upbringing was your own upbringing. That's all you knew. That's all I knew. So it's not a comparison between who had the worst or who had the best. It all worked perfectly. The way that I would have you consider it is your childhood was your personal boot camp. We each had a unique boot camp that God, the universe, put us through that prepared us to be who we are today. So my boot camp was unique to me. Your boot camp was unique to you. And that gave you all the tools that you needed for you to be who you are today. So that's part A: forgiving people that you may have had anger to, forgiving people that you may have had hatred for, and actually transmuting that from the hatred and anger and negative energy to thank you for teaching me those lessons. Because one of the other things that I've heard from one of Napoleon Hill's statements, as well as W. Clement Stone, they say every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. So the bigger the adversities that you go through, by the way, those aren't comforting words when you're going through the stuff, right? But in time, it's going to be something that you look back and say, thank you for that chapter, because that taught me this. I wouldn't wish that on anybody to learn what I learned, but holy cow, I'm so grateful for it. So I look at my whole life, all the things that I used to label as terrible or bad or unfair, it was my growing up boot camp. And so you can come to terms with that. So then fast forwarding to where you are now, it's Who do I serve? How do I serve them? How can I give more of myself? And what I feel is three things that differentiate me from you, from everybody else, even if we're in the same niche or industry: your personality, your experience, and your perspective. Your childhood, your life gave you a unique personality, the unique experiences that you have, and your unique perspective. And this is kind of cool. Like, so this was a big takeaway for me when I was the manager of a copier sales company. And so we sold Konica Minolta copiers. I worked from being the number one rep to being the major account manager to being the branch manager. And as the branch manager, my goal was to help each of the salespeople to become as successful as they could be, because the more success they attained, it benefited me. So I opened up my Nightingale Conant library and gave them, in particular, I gave them the Zig Ziglar training on sales. I gave them a Brian Tracy training on sales, and I gave them a Tony Robbins training on sales. And I was so excited, like, here, I'm giving you this multi-$100 program that I purchased and invested. Listen to it and watch how it helps you get to another level in your sales. It taught me that not everybody thinks the way I think.
Yeah.
That was a big lesson.
I've gone through that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like,
what do you mean? How do you not take this? This is gold.
Right. Yeah. So, and the second lesson was you can lead a horse to water, but you can't drown it. Right. So that was so I gave them the tools, and then it took me days to even convince them to, because I kept asking them, what'd you think? What'd you think? Oh, I haven't listened to it yet. Right. So the next lesson was this, and this really circles back to the three things that separate you from everyone else: your personality, your experience, and your perspective. These are three men that have totally impacted my life in extremely positive ways. So thankful and grateful for each of them. The feedback I got from the person that I gave the Tony Robbins tape to was, oh man, that dude's all hype, man. I couldn't listen for more than 5 minutes. Yeah, come on, get over yourself. Too much hype. I couldn't take it. And I wasted my time trying to convince them how this could be the thing that takes your whole life to another level. And I also learned you can't force somebody. It has to be on their terms and their choice.
Yep.
Then I heard from the Zig Ziglar person. Oh man, I listened for 5 minutes. I couldn't take his country accent. Oh, I had to turn it off. And I'm like, Zig he will teach you stuff that you can implement to grow your results. You want more results, right? So I noticed they didn't embrace I'm like, take the best, leave the rest. Like, get over that. Just listen and learn what you can implement to grow your results. But he wasn't hearing it. Then the other person that listened to the Brian Tracy tape, hey, what'd you think? Oh man, I'd rather watch paint dry. Brian is so freaking boring. I couldn't listen for more than 5 minutes. I'm like,
that's crazy. I could listen to Brian all day.
I know, right. And that's we're not the norm, right? So that was a big lesson for me to realize not everybody thinks the way I do. Not everybody subscribes to the take the best, leave the rest philosophy and mentality. And that's something I would share with you as a listener. Everybody that you cross paths with, you can learn, in my opinion. Look, everybody I cross paths with is a teacher to me in some way. Take the best, leave the rest. I believe in divine appointments. Everything happens perfectly. This person's in my path for some reason. I'm going to maximize that, right? So take the best, leave the rest. So to the question that you asked, how can you still be driven? And it really boils back to, like, at least this is my goal for people. I want you to be you fully and unapologetically. Like I don't want people to have the masks. I don't want people to pretend. There's nothing better than being you genuinely, fully and unapologetically, and being able to be you fully and unapologetically to provide a lifestyle for you and your family that is of your desires and dreams. That's my whole goal. In all that I do, I serve people who want to be themselves fully and unapologetically and learn how to monetize that. There's nothing better than getting paid to fulfill your lifestyle for just being you. Like, that's possible. That's my life. And that's many of our mutual friends' lives. How can you be you, contributing value to the people that you want to help and serve, and just reap the rewards of being at this greatest amusement park in the universe?
In a lot of ways, that's a holy grail. There's so many people that dream of that. They spend their whole life aiming for that and falling short. Can I ask you for a quick second if we can backtrack a little bit? This whole idea of healing that inner wound, was a near-death experience that healing moment for you? Or did that, we know, having been in this personal development community, if for those that are not interested, most often that feeling of not being loved or worthy really goes back to childhood experiences and mom and dad not necessarily filling that gargantuan hole of love and desire that we all seek. And undoubtedly, they always fall a little bit short. And then we're left with this psychological pain of, oh, they didn't come to my graduation or what have you. And so, yeah, was it the near-death experience that healed that? Did you have to go back and address that later as during
It,
your journey?
it's like the ingredients of a dish that you're cooking in your kitchen. All the ingredients worked for me to be where I am now, but they each had their individual like it's a whole bunch of mini things that need to be made separately, and then they finally get put into the whole big bowl, right? So there was a lot of the near-death experience was definitely a larger portion that was put into the big bowl. But I'm actually going to share that I think will be the best epiphany, hopefully for the listeners. Hopefully you listening to this will hear this and see a portion of this in yourself. This was probably the biggest lesson. I got chills just thinking about it of my life, because it's not just that am I lovable? Am I good enough? But the worthiness. Am I worthy of this? And so here we are, and this is a story. The story goes back to my senior year in high school, wrestling 119 pounds. I was really good at wrestling. I didn't believe I was as good as others knew me to be. So I didn't feel worthy of being at the top of this. I didn't even think I'd go to states, right? People saw me as being a state champion. So here's one perfect example, and I'll fast forward to where this epiphany changed everything for me. And this hopefully will change everything for your listeners. So 119 pounds, I'm at this dual meet. I could crush the person I'm wrestling at 119. The team had a tough person at 126. My coach came to me and said, "Hey, Tom, if you say no, I'm totally cool with it. I know you're pin this guy in seconds at 119. They have that tough dude at 126. Would you be willing to go up? Because that 126 pounder will beat our 126 pounder. We can put the JV person in who will probably beat the 119 pounder. You will probably beat the 126 pounder, and that will help us win this match." And I said, "Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, okay, game. I'm game." For those that don't know wrestling, a 7 pound difference is a big difference in weight, right? So that's 7 pounds of muscle. And so he had some height on me. So when we first get out there, he kind of threw
David
me
and Goliath.
Yeah, right. He kind of threw me a little bit, but then I ended up beating him pretty decisively. I didn't pin him, but I beat him by a decent margin. I don't remember. I'm not the type who remembers all the scores and all that stuff, but I do remember after coming out, after showering and changing, walking over to where my dad was in the bleachers, a coach from another town was talking to my dad saying, "Your son's going to win states this year." In my mind, I said, "No, I'm not. I can't beat Gary Dakar." It's a big lesson. I self-limited myself. I didn't believe the preparation and the work and the dedication that I put in was gargantuanly more than what everyone else was doing. I just thought what I was doing was what everybody else was doing. That wasn't the case. I was putting in the work, and I was dedicated and committed at a very elite level, but I didn't believe I could be even go to states, B, even win states. So that was what I said in my mind. Well, fast forward a couple months, or maybe a few weeks, it's in sectionals, and we're in a match. It's me and Gary Dakar with about 5 seconds left. The score is 0-0. Probably because I was limiting myself before we even got on the mat, right? I didn't feel I could beat this person. Well, if I had even a little bit more belief in myself, I could have crushed that kid. But needless to say, with 5 seconds left, I was like, whoa, I'm supposed to be losing to Gary. And I let him take me down with 5 seconds to go. And I lost the match. Now, did he win or did I lose? I lost the match because I didn't believe. So there's that quote that says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." That's from Henry Ford. So I didn't think I could beat him, and I was right. If I thought I could beat him, I would have, right? And the thought, it's not being delusional. It's putting the work in and being prepared for those opportunities, for those opponents. If you're doing the proper work, you deserve to have that belief. Like, I'm going in to win this. Fast forward a couple years. That was 1990. 1993, I'm in the Marine Corps, and I end up at Quantico, Virginia for the All-Marine Wrestling Trials. And actually, no, it was before going to the wrestling trials. We had a little wrestling community at MCAS, Cherry Point, North Carolina. And the dude who put this together was a second lieutenant who just came from the Naval Academy. And he was the team captain of the Naval Academy. He's like a bulldog. He's tough. And he was like my weight class, a little bit lighter than me. And we'd battle it out. So anyhow, we're wrestling. And I'm wrestling these other kids who are pretty tough. And I'm like, damn, I got to work hard to beat these guys. After we're done, I beat this one, I beat that one, I beat that one. They're like amazed, like, "Dude, like, how many times did you win states?" I'm like, "What? Win states? Like, I never even went to states." They're like, "What?" And I didn't even think to ask. I'm like, why? How many times did you win states? He's like, I'm a 3-time state champion. Like, what? And the other one's like, yeah, I'm a state champion. The other one's a state champion. I was the only non-state champion.
Hmm.
And I got chills thinking about this. So
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, had I known they were that state champions, I wouldn't have allowed myself to beat them. One. Two, in that moment, same skill sets. This is the huge point. Same person, same skill sets, different belief. I now became a state champion beater. I love beating state champions. Huge, and some people, anybody that's in sports may have a similar moment in your career, but this moment changed everything in my life. So this was the main lesson that I'm hoping to impart to you listening to this, that you can grasp this too. You have the goods. You're here listening to this. You know how many people aren't listening to this? You're taking the steps that put you in that elite level. You are an elite person. You have huge potential and capabilities that the world deserves to tap into. I know that because you're here listening to this. Guess what? Only 2 out of 100 people do. And you're here this far into it. That shows your dedication, your commitment. You have what it takes. So I was the same person, same skill set, different belief, and I went on to beat state champions in competitions. So now fast forward to after the Marine Corps, and I'm in a tournament in 1997, and I'm in the finals against this state champion, and I beat this state champion in the finals. And needless to say, I just came out of the Marine Corps end of 96, December 96. So towards the end of 97 is when this happened. When I beat this kid, the dude's dad came out of the stands and tried fighting me on the mat. Like, and for everyone else, like, who is this kid and where did he come from? Like, who is this guy? Like, I'm at that time, like 24 years old. And it was all from that tiny little wrestling experience in 1993, 94 that opened my eyes to not being able to beat a state champion to like, oh, I'm a state champion beater, and being proud of that. Like on paper,
What a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
From a complete limitation to a launching pad of
Correct.
another stratosphere of success.
Right. And so that applies to business. So that also, and I'm still, admittedly, here's my other belief. Each and every one of us are as healthy as we believe that we should be. Each and every one of us are in the relationships, whether they're fulfilling or degrading, as we feel worthy of. Each of us have the bank accounts that we feel comfortable with right now. So each of us are in our comfort zones, health, relationships, and finances right now. We are exactly where we feel worthy.
Which is a tough pill to swallow, because there's people that have, strained relationships, or they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're saying, why, what do you mean I'm in my comfort zone? This doesn't feel very comfortable at all. Can you expand on that a little bit?
My old me would have been argumentative with that. No, I'm not.
Yep.
No, I'm not. And I wouldn't have accepted that as a reality. And now, and I raise my hand because here's my other belief. None of us, regardless of any level of success, nothing takes away problems and challenges. As a matter of fact, life is the ultimate level upper. Like if you think of playing Mario Kart or any video game, and there's level 1, level 2, level 3, life doesn't stop. It doesn't say, oh, okay, yeah, you've learned all you need to learn. It's continually leveling you up, which means you're always going to have bigger, harder, more pressing challenges. And you're either in some serious challenges now with your health, your relationships, or your finances, just coming out of some big ones, or there's some big ones right around the corner. And things are happening at such a fast pace in today's day and age. It's all three. We're just coming out of some big things. There's some big things happening now, and there's some big things around the corner. Like that's how the world, I mean, I'm 51. I remember the news cycle would have a big event once a quarter. Like this big thing happened, and we're talking about it for 3 months. No, now it's multiple big events every day. It's like we live in the most, it's just a crazy time. Uncertainty is at all-time highs, right? So I'm saying this to let you know there's no level of success that eliminates chaos, problems, and challenges, and not just little ones. As you grow, more money, more problems. It takes a proactive approach, and it takes someone who has to step into I'm only in charge of 3 things in my life, at least from my perspective: my thoughts, my words, my actions. Are my thoughts, my words, and my actions on track with the goals and desires that I have? They either are or they aren't, right? And that leads back to, are you clear on what is your goal for your health? And it's not just the reflection in the mirror. I'm talking mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Those are important. That's the foundation of your life. And the next, in my opinion, is your relationships. First and foremost, the relationship with you and yourself. Working on healing those wounds, working on being that best version of yourself, working on loving yourself. This was a big one for me. I was very forgiving with friends and family members who would screw me over in a big way. And I would forgive them. What I came to find out in my journey, that I was not forgiving myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was beating myself up and not forgiving myself. So I would be super forgiving for people, but I wouldn't be forgiving to myself. And there comes a point where, and by the way, I'm not stating I'm fully got this down. There's still things that I'm healing from in my past, and not just with others and experiences and circumstances, but with my own forgiveness of myself. I'm a work in progress until I'm dead and buried. My goal is to just be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. And a little bit each day compounds into, you're a whole different person in a year and in 10 years. Right. And so my other perspective is, I'm of the belief that there's a version of us 10 and 20 years from now that ranges from dead and gone to multi-billionaire status and everything in between. And not just the money, but we're talking optimal health, optimal relationships, optimal finances. And it's up to us to determine, where am I now and where do I see, reasonably. Like, I'm not going to be the first trillionaire. Like, that's just ridiculous. But here's where I feel I can be, and put that line 20 years to the future. That's where I'm going to be. That's the optimal health, optimal relationships, and optimal financial situation, which circles back to the thoughts, words, and actions that I'm currently doing. So there's two important conversations I would recommend you have with yourself. One is the one with you now and yourself 20 years ago. And just picture where, and it's kind of simple now. It's a little more than 20 years, but you know exactly where you were on September 11th, 2001. Those that are old enough to remember that, like, where the heck you were. What would you give as advice to yourself? Maybe that wasn't your deepest, darkest time period, but what advice would you give and comfort would you give to yourself if you were a true friend and a wise friend who really cares and loves you? What advice would you tell that version of yourself 20 years ago? Right. And if it's, man, like, dude, you got a wild journey ahead, bro. But listen, some things will look like this is the end of the road. Well, I guess it's all over now, but you are a kick butt problem solver. You are someone who cares. You are someone who delivers value. So you know what? Stand up, dust yourself off, stand tall, get your breath, get grounded, and get clear on where you're going next. What's next? What's next? What's next? And one step at a time, you're going to meet the right people. You're going to have the right experiences. And wow, your dreams are going to be, wildly, you're going to be amazed, but it's going to take a lot of hardship. It's going to take a lot of perseverance. It's going to take a lot of dedication, but you got this. Just stay strong. What would be that advice you tell yourself 20 years ago? And then picture that best version of yourself. What advice would that version come back and tell you right now? I did this when I was 40, and that 60-year-old version of me, the Marine, came back. He was pissed. He's like, dude, you better get your stuff together. You are not walking in alignment. You are talking a lot, but you're not following through with the proper actions. And you're not going to get here if you keep doing what you're doing. So either square your stuff away or find another future version, because you ain't going to make it here. Then when I got to 50, my 70-year-old version was like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right path. Yes, there's still going to be hardships. Yes, life continually levels you up. Yes, there's going to be challenges that will put you on your knees, and that's exactly where you need to be, which is, by the way, the same advice Zig Ziglar gave me in October of 2001. I was fortunate to pay for a breakfast at the Peter Lowe Success event a month after September 11th happened. They canceled the event after the whole chaos happened. They rescheduled it. And I was, at the time, the publisher of the North Carolina Home Book. For anyone looking to build or remodel or decorate their $1 million plus home in Charlotte, Greensboro, or Raleigh, Durham, I was the publisher, the manager of that location, but my regional manager was a total prick. And he told me, if you go to that event, you may not have a job when you come back. So here, by the way, at this time, I had a baby on the way. I had just gotten married to this mother of my child. I had just bought my first new home. I had a duplex up in New York. So this is my second home, but my first single family home, brand new.
Residence.
Yep. And he's now threatening me with my job. So on paper and with all common sense, I should have not gone. But my heart told me, you need to go. Like, think about it. Just a few weeks after September 11th, the talk about uncertainty, like the whole world shut down and we didn't know what to do. I said, well, on the way there, I'm like, well, JD, if I don't have a job when I come back, that would really suck. I just recently married. I got a baby on the way, got a new house. I don't know what I do, but I'll figure it out. But I just feel I need to be there. Well, you can go to the next one. I'm like, I don't know if there's going to be a next one. So I went and I paid extra for a breakfast with Zig Ziglar. You get into the breakfast area. There's about 100 plus people there. Shake his hand, you get a picture, you get to talk for a second, then you're escorted to the table. Sitting at the table, there's a lot of cool people there. We're having conversations. I look over, I see Zig standing by himself by the door. And there's people talking to him. Excuse me, gentlemen. get up, I start walking over there. They're like, is he allowed to do that? And I didn't know if I was allowed to do it either, but I was not going to miss this opportunity. So I went over and I said, Mr. Ziegler, I just want to say, you have been such a powerful impact in my life through your audios, through your books, through your videos. Like you're like my dad or grandfather that I didn't really have. And I just want to say thank you. And I said, but what do we do now? After September 11th, what do you do now? He's like, son, do you sell something? I said, yes. I sold advertising for the North Carolina home book. Does it provide value to who you sell it to? I said, yes. Well, this put us right on our knees as a country, and that's exactly where we need to be. He said, you need to stand up, you need to go out, and you need to sell. You need to create your own economy. He said, the more value you provide, the more you sell, the more the terrorists lose. If you stop selling, the terrorists win. So it was a very deep conversation that inspired me to pick myself back up, get out of the uncertainty, and just, you know what? That sucked, but I got to keep moving forward. I got to keep selling for me, my family, the people that I provide value for and to. And so that was a key conversation. But anyhow, I would recommend you have that conversation with yourself 20 years ago, and then pick that best version of yourself 20 years from now, have it come back and give you advice. And sometimes that might be some hard to hear advice.
It's interesting when you take the time and create the space to do that, because to your point, sometimes you hear things that are you wouldn't hear otherwise. You really do have to slow it down and get quiet and be intentional about that time. You can't be, listening to a podcast, or you can't be doing it with a ton of distraction around you. Just really creating that intentional window of space where you just allow yourself to connect to that higher version of yourself or to a higher power. I've done that multiple times, but I also forget sometimes, and it's like ruminating in my head, but then when you really do take the time, it's that quote unquote still small voice. And it's often, I have found it's often very short and to the point. It's like a 3-word thing, like get your ass in gear or take time for you or whatever it is. I got a question for you. You have said that lack of clarity is the root of all failure.
Mm-hmm.
You've also said, which to me relates, stop overcomplicating success.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a guy that tends to get too close to the forest to see the trees, and it gets overwhelming and complicated. I can see it for other people. Like for other people, for whatever reason, I can simplify. I see where their disconnect is, and I can do it great. But when it comes to myself, I get in my own way.
Yep.
What's some advice that you could share with not just me, obviously, but for the listeners to simplify success?
Yes. Well, look, my company name is Simplifier Inc., and I'm known as the Simplifier. And a lot of people do overcomplicate this journey of life, do overcomplicate success. And the best definition of success that I've heard is from Earl Nightingale. And if you haven't listened to The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, write that down, go to YouTube, search for Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret, listen to it. If you have listened to it, listen to it again. That's one of the most amazing, mind expanding 30 minutes that you'll invest in yourself and in your future. I was introduced to that by my good friend Jeffrey Gitomer back in 2001 when I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Gitomer and I met in person for the first time on December 31st, 01. That's a whole nother story. But at that meeting, that's when he told me, listen to that audio by Earl Nightingale every single day, at least once. And I did for a long time. And so regardless of how many times you listen to that again. But in that, you're going to hear Earl describe what I feel is the best definition of success. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. So as long as you're taking one step after the next to get to that goal, you are a success. So a person in high school that's going to class and doing their homework and preparing for their tests is a success. You as an entrepreneur must be clear on what that goal is, because if you're not clear on what that goal is, what's the Alice in Wonderland? Well, where are you looking to go? Anywhere. Well, any step will get you there, right? You need to be clear on where you're going. So lack of clarity is the root of all failure. And it's so easy to be caught up in urgency and, I got to get this done. I got to get that. And just being a firefighter in your business and life to where you don't stop and retire yourself as the general manager of the universe. If you haven't retired from that role yet, give that one a go. Stop being the general manager of the universe. There's things you can control and there's things you can't. Get clear on what those are. Get at peace with those. There's a great book on that from Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And, stop worrying and focusing on stuff that you can't control. Like it's a waste of your time. And time is our life. Like that's the most precious and ever fleeting asset that we have. So gain clarity on what is a good use of your time and what is not a good use of your time, A. B, for each of the areas of your life, health, relationships, and finances, where are you going? What's your goal? Like mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, where are you and where are you going in those areas? For your key relationships, one with you and yourself, one with you and your spouse, you and your children, you and your business partner, you and your employees, the key people. A, who are your key people? B, where is that relationship on a scale of 0 to 5, and where do you want it to be? And what's a plan that you can put in place to maximize and grow those relationships? And similarly, for your finances, where are you and where are you going? For your today money, your tomorrow money, and your contribution. The today money is what supports your lifestyle, like your bills, your expenses, all that, plus your lifestyle. What is that number? And what I found is I'm more creative when I'm above that number than when I'm below that number on a monthly basis. In my journey, I've been below that monthly number, more month left than money, long periods of times, and it's survival mode, right? So what can you do to get the nut covered and get out of survival mode to explore the bigger tomorrow money projects? And the tomorrow money projects, none of us have a crystal ball, but we have discernment and we have a track record of what's worked and what hasn't worked. And it's up to you to identify what's the one project that's my tomorrow money project that's beyond 30 days, but within 60 to 90 days, hopefully, that has a potential to be a big value contribution to the people that I'm serving, and also will allow me to reap some good returns for putting that out there. And then eventually the marketplace tells you if it was a good idea or not. And you become better at discerning which ones have a higher probability of winning and which ones don't. But I mean, some of my clients have done billions of dollars in revenues. And the funny part about it is they don't have a 100% or 1,000% batting record. Like they fail 6 to 7 times out of 10. So with a 3 to 4 time success ratio out of 10, you can still produce great results. But many people are too scared through perfectionism or procrastination that they're not willing to step up to the plate and give it a go. Mm-hmm. So you're going to strike out. You're going to miss on a lot of them, but you don't need a lot to succeed wildly. But I can guarantee that if you don't step up to the plate, you're not going to get any success. Mm-hmm. So that's my Trinity success method I just described. Out of all the things you can focus on, health, relationships, and finances, notice that it's not, well, how can I word this as a Marine? As a Marine, I was willing to lay my life down to protect the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. I still would lay my life down to protect strangers and people I don't know. Like that's just in my nature to help. That's just who I am and what I do. But I'm a constitutionalist. So the other thing of me stating this part is the world is there to distract you. Like, so the whole purpose of the world is to distract you from what's important. What I feel is important to me, and you can consider being important to you, is your health, your relationships, and your finances. All the other stuff is nonsense BS that doesn't require any of your attention. And I put the asterisk there, as long as people aren't infringing upon your freedoms and your rights, right? So don't hurt anybody and don't be telling me what to do or how to do it. Like unsolicited advice and or control, I don't play too well with. I respect advice and all this, but I'm not a big fan of government and other things telling me what I can and can't do. So I'm a constitutionalist, and I'm someone who believes in our God-given freedoms and rights, but I don't waste time, my most precious and ever fleeting asset, on trying to worry about or fix things that I can't control, right? There's things you can control. There's things you can't control. You need to understand what you can. There are certain things to protect your freedoms and rights that I recommend you do your research of what those are. Do those, but then don't waste your time and don't get emotion. Emotion is another one that steals. It's almost like a game, like life, all the corporations, all the governments. It's like a goal is how can we get the most amount of eyeballs. And the bigger the eyeballs and the most amount of attention, if we go back to the thing, time is money, time is greater than money. Look at some of the biggest billion-dollar companies, and what are they doing? They're stealing the most amount of time. Think of Google, think of YouTube, think of Instagram, think of Facebook, think of TikTok. All those big billion-dollar companies, what are they good at? Stealing people's time. So time is money, right? If you can really step back and look at it from that objective. And my recommendation is don't get caught up in that. Put your blinders on to not let all the distractions and all the BS steer you away from, in my opinion, doing what's yours to do. Mm-hmm. Your health, from where it is to where you want it to be, your key relationships, where they are to where they want to be, and your financial situation from where it is to where you want to be. And in that comes the provider and protector of, as long as no one's hurting me and my family, do what you got to do. Don't be coming in and hurting me and my family, though. And so that leads to my next thing that I teach people on is I am me, F you. I am me, F you. I'm me fully and unapologetically. That's my goal. And I'm of the belief, as long as you're being you fully and unapologetically and not hurting people, be you, do you. Like I got no, hey, I want you to be that version of you. Go, run, give it your all. At the same time, I'm going to be me. Like that would solve all of the nonsense, in my opinion, if people could just be themselves fully and unapologetically. Now, as I say that, there's a small percentage of people who love hurting people, and those would have to be, taken care of. But you get what I'm saying. Most all the problems will go away if everyone subscribes to I am me, F you. So I go into deeper training on how to gain clarity at a level that very few people do in their entire life. And that's all, like a whole bunch of free resources are at tombeal.com, TOMBEAL.com. And one of the resources there is quiverofclarity.com. And that's a training that gives you a simple process that you can gain extreme clarity, which with clarity gives you the turns that need to be made to get from where you are to where you want to be. Like I'm here on this beautiful island in St. Thomas. That's my view behind me. And there's a lot of catamarans and sailboats and yachts. None of the yachts and sailboats leave without having a destination in mind. But so many people in life are just aimlessly going around life. Napoleon Hill talks about it in his book, Outwitting the Devil. 98% of people are drifters, is what he states in his book. Only 2% are non-drifters who are clear on where they are and where they're going. So it doesn't have to be so complicated. First, gain clarity of where are you and where are you looking to go? And then circling back to that Earl Nightingale quote, as long as you're taking one step after the next, it doesn't have to be a life-changing step each day, but with consistency, you can make great progress. It really boils back to just getting clear on where you are and having the consistency to follow the terms. I mean, we all have these devices now. Another device that will steal your most precious, never fleeting asset, by the way, if you allow it to. That's what it's designed to. It's got trillions of dollars of marketing from casinos and all the psychological stuff that gets people to stay in the casino so long. It's got all that in all the different apps and stuff. Its whole purpose is to steal your life. If you allow it, it will. It's up to you to have those blinders on and use it as a very powerful tool, not be used by it and not let your life slip away. Would you say that you swipe? It would be easy for you to say you swipe 30 minutes a day. Yes. Most everyone does. How about 60 minutes a day? Yes, most everyone swipes 60 minutes, right? And or more. And I'm using these numbers because they're small and minuscule. 30 minutes a day, if you do the math, 30 minutes times 365 days breaks down to you losing 4.5 40-hour work weeks in 1 year. Now remember, think back to when you had a 40-hour work week. That's a long week, right? 30 minutes a day. Only 30 minutes a day is 4.5 40-hour work weeks in a year. That gave me chills just thinking about it. So I'm saying that to put this plant in your mind. You know damn well you swipe more than 30 minutes a day. Let's just go up to an hour. An hour a day, which isn't that much, of swiping aimlessly steals 9 40-hour work weeks from you each year. What? 2 months out of 12. And you know an hour is nothing. So that's a frame that I want to plant out to you. Like, take back control of your most precious, never fleeting asset, which is time. If you don't put boundaries around it, the world will steal it. And you won't make any progress because you'll be too busy putting out fires that the world creates, not having the stability and the foundation to know, here's what's mine to do, here's what's not mine to do. When you gain that clarity, you become unwavering. You become calm, cool, collected amidst the chaos. And that's my wish for each and every one of the viewers here.
Man, that is so powerful. That is such a powerful reminder. And thank you for articulating in that way, because it really does. I mean, that landed hard for me because I definitely spend too much time on this stupid thing. And it, it's an addiction, and it is an invasive technology that's seeking to suck away your life.
Correct.
So thank you for that. That was powerful, man. I know that we're a little bit short on time. You've mentioned your site, tombeal.com, for those that are interested in finding out more. I mean, Tom is just scratching the surface. You guys, any entrepreneurs or go-getters out there, or anybody that's just curious about learning a little bit more about Tom's perspective and how he's been able to help others achieve massive success, please go check it out. There's a wealth of information that he's giving away. Tom, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your heart, for sharing your wisdom. It's really nice if I could just take a moment to acknowledge you. There's a lot of people that are very successful that turn around to give back, but you can, if you are tuned into it like I am, like you sense I'm doing this because it's either my business, it drives my profits, there's an ego. I feel, at least anyway, that there's just a very genuine love that you have to really wanting to help lift people up. And so I commend you for that. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Peter. It's been an honor being here. We've had some amazing conversations. My hope, and the one wish I have is I'd love to hear the feedback. Like the cool part about this is there were so many nuggets shared. I want to hear what your personal feedback is. So wherever this is posted, shared, this was my biggest takeaway. And the funny part about it is kind of like a good book. Each time you listen to it, you'll pick up a different takeaway. Because when you watch it, you were at this stage. When you go through it once, it'll bring you to a different stage. You watch it again. How did I miss that the first time? Like, so watch it. And I would love to hear, I'm sure Peter would, like, what was the most powerful, impactful lesson that you learned in this brief conversation today? So Peter, thanks for having me. This has been a blast. I love chatting about this. And it really does fulfill my wish as a child when I was crying from all those divorces and marriages and moving around. Like, man, I wish I just had somebody that could give me some insights, give me some wisdom. And I promise as a young child, if I ever make it, I want to give back. I want to help people and kind of be that bridge to help them get over those rough waters. So thank you for having me here. And I'm excited to see the feedback from the listeners.
Love that. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wired for Impact. If you're interested in creating and expanding your impact, be sure to visit us online at impactnow.com.